Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast. My name is Ben Lister. Today's podcast is with Neill villgo. So, I'll chat about Neill about his podcast and broadcast career. So, episode 19 of the Chatbox podcast. Here we go. Hello, welcome to another Chatterbox podcast. How are you doing today? Right, let's crack on, shall we? As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or job. So let's crack on with this week's guest. It's podcaster and broadcaster Neill villgo. Hello Neill, welcome along.
Hi Ben, thank you so much for having me on.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. Thanks. Not so bad at all. Always busy, but delighted to be able to take a few minutes out to have a chat with a brilliantly passionate radio and broadcasting fan like yourself.
I may have another lot of podcasters for you later.
Perfect.
Because I know people who are podcasters and have agreed to share my guest list, and we've agreed to share guest lists.
I love it. Well, the more people that I can talk to in the space, the better, because I love having a chatterbox with anybody that will do it.
Yeah, sure, why not? 5 questions about broadcasting and podcasting, if that's okay.
Go for it, Ben.
You ready to rumble in the jungle?
Yeah, well, I don't know about the rumbling, but I'll certainly get in the jungle. No problem at all.
Okay, let's go for it. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast and podcast career?
I love it. Boom, straight in with the hard question. That's a good one. So I started out at a little tin. What happened was I was on work experience, funnily enough, with my college. I did a really terrible media studies course at Oxford College of Further Education. And part of that course was I had to do 2 weeks work experience at a radio station. So I chose a little more of my mates were getting into a bigger radio station than me because they had a better educational background, so they were more attractive to the brands. I ended up with little Boss 603 in Cheltenham, and I was thinking to myself, oh my God, my mates are at Capital Radio, Fox FM in Oxford, which was, one of the big brands at the time. All these huge radio stations, and there was me tootling off to little Boss 603, an AM radio station playing old music that your dad was into in the middle of Gloucestershire. And to say that it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me is an understatement. I was there, I would say, a week before I was given on-air duties. That's how small this station was. And anybody listening that's ever sort of had any dealings with radio, I'm sure yourself, Ben, as well, you will know that sometimes it's all hands on deck because the radio stations are not always run by the most organized of people, management included. So what tends to happen is if someone goes sick or is late for their show, then they're asking very quickly for people to step in. And that's exactly what happened here. One of the daytime presenters had actually not turned up for work. No one, to this day, I don't think anybody knows what actually happened to him. But the boss of the radio station said, and I quote, "You've done such a good job of filing away the CDs that we've asked you to file away. Would you like a go at hosting 10 till 2? Of course, a wet behind the ears 18-year-old said, of course, no problem. So I ended up hosting my first radio show in the middle of my work experience and did, I guess, an okay job because they asked me to sort of come back and do cover. And after a 2-week work experience placement, about a year later, I was hosting the afternoon show. And so that's where it all started. Boss 603 playing Cheltenham's classic hits. I can even do the voice. Boss 603. So all those people now that are listening to this show in Gloucestershire, they're going to go, oh my God, it's like the radio station's back again. Or maybe not.
Yeah, it's brilliant that there's good radio stations out there. It's brilliant you started your career there. And how is your podcast career going as well? How did you start that?
I started, so this is, some people would probably get triggered by this, to be honest, because It's one of those so there are a lot of people that claim to be one of the first to do podcasting, but before we started doing this show, we mentioned Bruno Brooks, who I know that you've been having a chat with, Ben. And I've got to give massive respect to Bruno. He is an amazing visionary in the broadcasting industry, and frankly doesn't get as much recognition for what he's done as he deserves, to be fair. So he started a radio station called Storm Live. I say radio station. It was like a radio station, but it was probably anything but a radio station. It didn't have any FM signal. It was all broadcast through Sky satellites. So it was on Sky Digital. I don't know, probably a bit before your time, but in the old days, our digital radio, before you had it in your car or you'd buy a DAB set, because people weren't buying them back then, most of the digital radio was through your television. It was on the Sky satellite system. And so he set up a channel on Sky Digital called Storm Live, which also simulcast on the internet. It was an internet radio station. It had a webcam and everything and a chat room, and it was pretty much ahead of its time. So I discovered during my time there that the website, you could actually upload audio. So what I did was I took what you would call now, I suppose, a podcast. At the time, it was telescoping your radio show, basically chopping the beginning, chopping the end, cutting out all the adverts, and cutting out some of the music and sticking that as an MP3 file on a website. So overnight, crashed the website, which was not too great. Bruno wasn't best pleased. But that's really when I started to get the thirst for, so when you're doing a radio show, it doesn't have to be lost in the ether forever. You can actually grab this audio and stick it out and repurpose it and have people listening to it maybe a year after the actual the transmission went out. So that was where I believe podcasting started, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I've just really, honestly, Ben, I've dabbled with podcasting on and off ever since. So that was 2001. Then podcasting kind of came about around 2005, 2006, when, not mainstream, but more known about. Some of these podcasting companies started to surface, and I dabbled with the medium, to be honest, with mixed results. And that's something I brought to radio stations. Whenever I've worked at radio stations, I've sort of encouraged them to get into this online on-demand content space, and with good results. And what I think the first time I realized there was something in this was when I was working at a radio station called Jack FM in Oxfordshire, and the one in Reading, actually. And we were taking some of the shows, sticking them online, and we were getting sponsorship offers for them. People were actually willing to pay money. And from a medium which people were saying, you can't make money from podcasting, I was kind of thinking, well, you obviously can, because we are. And that was where the vision and the seed of Podnose podcasting came from, I guess.
Brilliant start. Question 2, who were your inspirations in broadcasting and podcasting when you were starting out?
When I was starting out, there was a chap called Kenny Everett. Now, Kenny Everett was, I suppose, the closest you could compare these days to Chris Moyles. He was an absolute maverick. He was always upsetting his bosses. He was always in trouble. The government were trying to shut him down. He started out on the pirate ships, so, he had that rebellious nature about him from the beginning. But what I loved about Kenny, and I was literally, I was getting tapes of him from magazines, to listen to him, at any point I wanted to, because getting him live in real time was just not enough. You had the Kenny Everett video show, which was his television show, and he was doing more of what he was doing on the radio in pictures. It was just phenomenal. And he was the reason I was watching what he was doing, and I was seeing what, the sort of stunts he was getting up to, the characters he was creating. And I just thought, I want to do this. This is exactly what I want to do. I don't want to play music. I want to do what Kenny Everett does. And I suppose that was the first kind of inspiration I had. Then a bit later on, obviously Chris Moyle surfaced. Chris was a very gifted broadcaster. I think, people don't realize how raw Chris was when he started out in the old days at Chiltern FM. He used to do a late night show, and he had characters called Little Fella, which was basically him sped up on a reel to reel. All these brilliant ideas that he was coming out with, which I think, to be honest, sadly, Radio 1 kind of hammered out of him when the producers got involved and they were sort of telling him to behave, and, you know, they were playing it a bit safe with Chris. I think the raw, unfiltered Chris is the best, most talented Chris that you know, broadcasting's ever seen. Nick Abbott, another massive inspiration in the mid-90s on Virgin Radio, the original Virgin Radio. You know, the stuff he was doing with the talk format, just incredible. He was ripping off a guy called Neill Rodgers from Florida, but he did it in such a brilliant way that he made it his own. He was literally doing the same act, but he did it in his own uniquely British way, and just intelligent broadcasting personified, really. And so, yeah, my inspirational characters, I guess, are the old school guys. I'm incredibly inspired by the likes of Greg James on Radio 1 today. He's brilliant at what he does some amazing bits. You know, he's very relatable, a great communicator. You know, radio today has some incredible new talent, and it's great to see that radio is still, you know, sticking to its roots in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you look at your old favourites like Paul Gambaccini, Tony Blackburn, who's one of my inspirations. You might have met any of them lot. Have you ever met Tony Blackburn?
Yes, I've stumbled across him at the BBC a couple of times, yeah. Great.
Have you ever had a conversation with him?
I wouldn't call it a conversation, because the funny thing is you don't really have conversations with these types of characters because they are larger than life and you're just in awe. So I know Stephanie on one of your previous episodes, Stephanie Hurst, you know, she is clearly very, you know, she admires a lot of people and is awe-inspired as well. And I think no matter what level you get to, and I think Stephanie would agree with this, I'm sure most of your guests would agree with this, that you get certain people you meet and you just go, oh my God, I have no idea how to cope with this moment because you're such a legend. You're so unbelievably inspiring. I'm just blah, blah. Your lip quivers, you get word salad, you say random words, you don't know what you're saying, and it's just like, wow, that moment was wasted. What a shame. But yeah, just incredibly inspiring people, and it's you never get over it. You never get over meeting your heroes like that.
And one of them, a good friend of Neil Fox and part of the Capital Trio of Tony Blackburn and Neil Fox, Chris Tarrant as well.
Brilliant. All great broadcasters. Yeah.
Yeah. Question 3, what is your favourite part about the job?
That's really hard because it's difficult to pick one particular aspect. So if you're looking at broadcasting first, because that's kind of the majority of the topic here on your show, I would say with broadcasting, it's just that buzz that you get where you know you've connected with somebody. So, you know, some stations get more engagement than others. Some of the smaller community radio stations really struggle, and I think that's a shame because that plays a really, really vital part now in community engagement. And I wish more people would get behind their local community radio stations because they really do have a lot to offer. But, you know, just that buzz of getting a text or a phone call, if you're lucky enough to have a phone system in your studio, getting that call and making that decision of, oh, I'm going to hit the record bus now and I'm going to get this call to air and top and tail it and get this 30 seconds over a song intro, that kind of thing. It's just that incredible moment, that incredible feeling that you get, that passionate moment of, wow, I'm really, you know, sparking with listeners here. It's a really great feeling. In terms of podcasting, I think it's just telling stories, being able to touch people's lives with you know, stories that are inspirational. You know, somebody can tell their story and it can maybe affect somebody for good, you know, in a massive way, and being able to sort of facilitate that through careful editing and, you know, use of music to sort of set a scene. That's a big thing. That's a big part of what I do at Podnose is, you know, I take what is essentially just a raw 20-minute conversation and find ways of putting, you know, sound in at particular points to really punctuate what's being said and really grab that engagement with the listener. They're like, oh wow, something's happening now, so this must be a poignant moment. They listen, you know, it's that whole lean-to thing they talk about in radio of content that makes you lean towards the speaker, and the ability that you can do, you know, the fact you can do that with podcasting in such a really definitive way. I love There's something you can't do with radio, because with radio, it's live and it's done and the moment's gone. With podcasting, you can be very deliberate and go, this is the emotion I want to spark now in the listener. And I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, as I say, what Stephanie has, just brilliant.
Yeah, incredible broadcaster, and you know what she's achieved, I think, goes tenfold for more than many broadcasters, because of, you know, the obvious the challenges that she's had in her life, and what she's done with those challenges, and the messages she's put out, and the inspiration she's given to a whole generation of people. I think incredibly inspiring broadcaster. A lot of respect for Stephanie.
When I interviewed her, I just wanted to give her a hug.
Bless you. You can't do that at the moment. Oh, actually, you can now. It's legal again.
Well, who knows? Who knows what's happening at the moment? We won't go into that. Question 4, how has COVID affected your life and line of work?
See, I'm one of the lucky ones, because I got out of radio full time just before all this happened. So in terms of losing a gig, it didn't happen because I didn't have a gig at the time. In terms of podcasting, it's only really affected in the way that it's made convincing people of the value of podcasting a little bit more challenging. Most people now, I think, understand the value of podcasting. They know that, you know, the process is I start a podcast, I get my content out there, people engage with it, and then there's a relationship built. So from that point of view, most of the work is now done, I suppose, with the fact that it's gone quite mainstream. However, in terms of from where I come from, helping entrepreneurs, brands, individuals to get their podcast out there, unfortunately, with the fact the economy is a bit uncertain at the moment, it's meant that people are really thinking very hard about, in terms of priorities. Like, do I do a podcast, or do I spend more money in Facebook marketing, or do I do a website, or do I go around networking? So it's made pushing podcasting, as I obviously will do because I'm so passionate about it, it's made it more challenging now, because obviously you're competing with 3 or 4 other types of platforms, other marketing strategies that people tend to be using. But yeah, apart from that, it hasn't really affected. You can do podcasting anywhere. It's a mostly remote based medium. I do record with people on site, but a lot of the customers that I have, a lot of the podcasters I'm working with, they can do it via methods like this, using video call technology.
Yeah, last question, because we're in a bit of a rush now. Sorry.
That's all right.
What advice would you give to young, aspiring broadcasters and podcasters who are starting out? Can you keep it quick, because I've got a bit of another guest waiting. So.
Of course, no problem at all, Ben. I would say to them very, very quickly, and in a nutshell, they need to follow in the footsteps of people like yourself, Ben, inspirational chaps who have had this idea to, communicate industry messaging and, share that knowledge, share that passion through podcasting and broadcasting. What you're doing now is the equivalent of what I was doing back in the mid-90s, where I got work experience at a radio station. What you're doing is you're going, I'm doing that work experience, but I'm doing it in my own terms. I'm managing my own situation here. I'm doing it in a dynamic and forward-thinking way. And I think what people like yourself are doing is brilliant, and keep it up.
Thank you, Neill. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, Neill.
Pleasure, Ben. Absolute pleasure.
Do join me again soon for another Chatbox podcast, but now please give it up for my special guest, Neill Vegler.
Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for listening, and that's a wrap. That was my interview with Neill Vegler. Really hope you enjoyed it. Hope it filled a gap in your time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that caboodle. And yeah, that's it. And I'll upload my interview with Robin Blairmyers, Benny Clifton and Gary Hammond. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and that's a wrap.